We continue now at the top of Daf Kufay and Dalit Amid Beis in Meseches Bava Basra. This is Bava Basra Daf 174b. On the previous summit, there was a machlokas amoroim. The case was as follows: you have a situation where a person owes money and he dies, and the arev, the guarantor, instead of consulting the yisomim before he pays off the debt, the guarantor goes ahead and pays off the debt, and then he goes to the yisomim and he wants to be reimbursed. And the situation was that the yisomim were minors, and both Rav Papa and Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua agree that the minors do not have to pay the arev. The question just is why. According to Rav Papa, they don't have to pay the arev because it's a mitzvah to pay off a Baal Chov, but since they are minors, they're not yet commanded in mitzvahs, and therefore they don't have to pay off the Baal Chov, or they don't have to pay off the arev rather in this situation. And Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua says that the reason why they don't have to pay is because it's possible the father set aside a bundle of money, meaning he already paid this off, and if he already paid it off, and they wouldn't know because they are minors, they can't investigate the matter, so therefore as minors they do not have to pay off the arev. And we should note over here that the Rashbam says this is specifically talking about a debt of the father. Now, the debt might have been recorded in a deed, but once the arev pays it off and now he wants to be reimbursed, it's considered to be a milva al peh. That's why there's no lien over here. That's why the arev actually has to go to the yisomim to get paid back. And again, we say in this situation that according to Rav Papa, the yisomim do not have to pay because they're not obligated in mitzvahs. According to Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua, while they are minors, there's no way for them to know what is going on with the finances of their late father, and so again, they don't have to pay in this situation. And the Gemara now says, "My beinayu." Well, what's the difference between the opinion of Rav Papa and Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua? And the Rashbam explains, "My beinayu kevan de bein lamar u bein lamar." Since according to both opinions, ein harev gova achshav miasmi, right now the guarantor is not able to collect from the orphans. So what's the difference between Rav Papa and Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua? And the Gemara answers, Ika beinayu, the difference is as follows. Kishachayev moda, one difference could be, let's say the father did admit that he owed the money. And the Rashbam explains, Kishachayev moda b'sha'as misa, so at the time of his death, so he said that he did owe the money. There is no concern that he set aside a bundle of money to pay this off, according to Rav Huna, because it's clear that he owes the money. So gavi miyasmi. So according to Rav Huna, you will collect from the orphans in this case. Rav Papa lo gavi ad godly. But according to Rav Papa, you're not going to collect until they actually become adults. And the Gemara continues and gives another practical difference, inami, or you can say, Teshamtu v'meis b'shamte. What happened was they excommunicated him, they ostracized the father because of the fact that he hadn't paid, and he died while he was ostracized, and therefore that indicates that he certainly is obligated. The Rashbam explains the Shamtu mis b'shamte shelo ratza lefra b'chayev. He didn't want to pay during his lifetime, and the Bezdin took this action, and that indicates that in this situation he is chayev. And again, therefore, according to Rav Huna, they're going to have to pay, and according to Rav Papa, they don't have to pay because they are minors. And the Gemara continues, Shalchu mitam, they sent a message from there, they sent a message from Eretz Yisrael, Shamtu v'meis b'shamte, in exactly this case, let's say they excommunicate him and he dies while he's excommunicated, Hilchasa Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua, the halach is like Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua, and in such a situation we say that in fact they do have to pay. And the Rashbam explains, Shalchu mitam hechad de Shamtu v'meis b'shamte, again in the situation of Shamtu v'meis b'shamte, Hadavar yadua shelo paru, it's clear that he hasn't been paid, Uchamisha chayev modedami, it's as if he admitted that he was chayev, and so therefore Hilchas Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua, the gavi miyasmi, the halach is in this case we do collect from the yisomim, v'lo amrin on yasmi la b'nei miyavin mitzvanin, and we don't say that the orphans are minors and they're not obligated in mitzvahs, they do have to pay in this case. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question from the following Brisa, Arev shal yashtar chov yotzi mitachas yado, let's say a guarantor, he has the shtar chov, meaning to say he paid off the debt and then he got the shtar from the lender, from the creditor, and now he wants to collect from the yisomim, eino gova, he's not able to collect, v'im kasabo, but if it's written in there that the lender wrote into the shtar chov, his kabalti mimcha, that I did receive the money from you, and essentially you paid off the debt for me, and therefore again, the Arev wants to be reimbursed from the borrowers, or in this case from the yisomim, Gova, he's able to collect from the Yisomim, and this is talking about a situation where they are minors. And so the Gemara says, B'shlam Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua. This is good according to Rav Huna Bereid Rav Yoshua. Mashkachas lo keshachayev moda. There is a possibility of an Arev collecting from the Yisomim who are minors. Let's say the person admitted that he was chayev, as we just said above. Elul Rav Papa kasha, but according to Rav Papa, this is difficult. You're never able to collect from them because they are minors. And the Gemara continues and says, Shani Hasam, it's different over there. In this case of the Braisa, Lahachi Tarach because it was for this reason that the person took the effort to write his kabalti, that says that in such a situation, the Yisomim actually do have to pay. And the Rashbam explains, when he writes his kabalti and the Orev has this shtar, which again is against them, therefore, it's not considered anymore a milva al peh. That's what happens. It converts. Normally, when the Orev is collecting, as we said, it converted to a milva al peh. But if he has a shtar which says his kabalti, then it actually is not considered a milva al peh any longer, of a milva bishtar. And now that it's considered a milva bishtar, in such a case of a milva bishtar, moder papa de gavinon miyasmer. Papa would admit that you do collect from Yisomim. De lo amrinan hacha mitzvah. Here you don't say the issue that it's a mitzvah and they're not obligated in the mitzvah. Elachov, rather it's an obligation. And mutalas aleim lifroa bal karcham. They have to pay even against their will. And the Gemara continues, Ha'u'arva de Ovid Kochavim, there was an Arev, there was a guarantor, and in this case the creditor was not Jewish, it was an Ovid Kochavim. De pare la Ovid Kochavim, mekame de litvi'inu liasme, exactly this case, he paid off the creditor who was not Jewish before he made any claim, before there was any claim made from the Yisomim, so again, he converted it into a milva al peh, exactly the situation we had above. And the Gemara continues, Amalei Rav Mordechai Rav Ashi. Rav Mordechai said to Rav Ashi, Hachi Amar Avimi me Hagrunya, Mishmei de Rava. This is what Avimi from Hagrunya says in the name of Rava. Afilu l'man damar chayshinan l'tzrari, even according to the one who says that we're concerned that maybe there was a bundle of money that was set aside, maybe it was paid off, and that's why the Yisomim don't have to pay in this situation. But Hani Mili Yisrael, that's only true when we're talking about a creditor who is Jewish, then there's a concern that it was paid, that there was money set aside. Avalovid Kochavim, but when we're talking about a creditor who's not Jewish, Kevan de Basra Arva Azel, since when it comes to the ways of the non-Jews by guarantors, they actually go to the Arev right away. They don't wait to first make a claim from the borrower. The way they proceed in these situations is they go straight to the Arev. So in situations where they go straight to the Arev, there's no reason for the borrower to have set aside a bundle of money to pay this off. So lo chayshin and letzrari, we're not concerned of tzrari. We say that there is no concern that there was tzrari in this case, and therefore in this case the Yisomim actually would have to pay, even according to that mandam, that generally we are concerned with tzrari, again, even according to Rav Huna, Bereid Rav Yoshua. But the Gemara continues, Amar Le, he said back to him, Adarab, on the contrary, it should be just the opposite. Afilu l'man damar lo chayshin l'tzrari, even according to the one who says that generally we're not concerned that there was a bundle of money that was set aside, that it was paid off. But Hani Mili Yisrael, that's true when the creditor is a Jew. Aval ovde kochavim, but when it comes to non-Jews, kevan de dinayu basar arva azli, since they go after the guarantor right away, so he laved the if not for the fact that the borrower set aside a bundle of money from the outset, lo have a mekabelei, no Arev is going to agree to be an Arev. The very fact that you have an Arev in the case where a creditor is a non-Jew, that indicates that it is more likely that money might have been set aside and that this was already paid off. And the Gemara continues at the two dots. The Mishnah said, "V'chein hayi Rav Shimon ben Gamliel Omer," and similarly, Rav Shimon ben Gamliel would say, "Ha'arev liisha b'chsubasa v'chulu." If somebody is a guarantor when it comes to a woman's ksuba, so if you have in such a situation that the husband wants to divorce his wife and he doesn't have property to pay the ksuba, and therefore the wife is going to go to the arev, so Rav Shimon ben Gamliel said that the husband has to take a neder that he's not going to get any benefit from his wife, meaning he's not going to go ahead and remarry his wife, because otherwise they might be in cahoots to try to get the ksuba paid by this guarantor, and then they'll just get remarried, and they'll have all of this property. And the Gemara says, Moshe bar Otzri arva de chsubasa de kalase have. Moshe bar Otzri, he was a guarantor for the ksuba of his daughter-in-law. And Rav Huna Berei, Rav Huna, his son, he was the one that was married to this daughter-in-law. Tzorba midrabanan have, he was a young Torah scholar. With the chikale milsen, he was in a financial situation, he was very poor. Amar Abaye said, Leka de nezel de nesve le'etza l'Rav Huna. Is there no one that can go? Abaye said, is there no one that can go and give advice to Rav Huna? De nigrish le'devisu, he should do as follows. He should divorce his wife. V'sezel v'sigbi ksuba me'avu, and then she'll go ahead and she'll collect the ksuba from his father. V'hadr nahadra, and so then he'll go ahead and he'll remarry her, and now he'll have all this property. He'll get out of his bad financial situation. But the Gemara continues, Amar le Rava, Rava said to him, Rava said to Abaye, that's not good advice, but it already said in the Mishnah that in such a case of divorce, he has to take a neder that he's not going to get any benefit from the wife, that he won't remarry the wife, and so this will not be effective at all. And the Gemara continues, Amar le Abaye, Abaye said back to him, Atu called the Megarish beveidina Megarish, do you think that everyone that divorces does it in court? Let him divorce privately. If he did it in court, the court would make him take this neder, but if he does it privately, then he can do the following, he can just divorce her privately, privately, not take the neder because the court will not make him take the neder because he's not divorcing in court, and then he'll be able to remarry her, and he'll have all of that property from the Ariv who was his father. But the Gemara continues, L'sof igloy milsa de kohenu, but in the end it turned out that Rav Huna actually was a Kohen, and so therefore even regardless of whether he takes a neder not to remarry his wife, it doesn't make a difference. He can't remarry his wife after a divorce because of the fact that he was a Kohen, and so therefore it would not have helped him at all to do what Abaye suggested. And the Gemara continues, Amar Abaye says, Hainu dam riinshi, that's what people say, Basar anya azla aniyusa, after the poor follows poverty, meaning the poor essentially, they don't catch a break. In this case over here, he was not able to take the advice that I had for him because of the fact that he was a Kohen. The circumstances forced themselves upon him that he wasn't able to get out of his situation of poverty. And the Gemara continues, Umi Amar Abaye hachi, but did Abaye really advise that a person should do this? This seems like something that is unethical for a person to go ahead and divorce his wife in order to get the ksuba paid off by the guarantor, which in this case was his father, and then get remarried. Abaye would never give such advice. Amar Abaye, but Abaye said, Ezeu Rasha Aram, who's considered a person who is a Rasha Aram, a wicked person who acts in a way that is improper. Zehamasi Eitza Limchar ben Chasim, that would be somebody who gives advice to sell the property. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel, like Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. The case over here with Reb Shimon ben Gamliel was a person bequeaths a property to somebody and says the property is going to go to you, and then it's going to go after you to somebody else. Now, technically, Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that first person that gets the property could sell the property, and then it'll never go to the ultimate person it's supposed to get to. But Abaye says a person is considered a Rasha Aram. A person is considered a person who is acting in a wicked, he's acting in a wise but wicked manner. If he actually gives this advice to sell the property, a person is not supposed to do this. And so therefore, if Abaye says a person is considered a Rasha Aram for acting in this manner, why would he give this advice to Rav Huna in this case? And the Gemara continues and answers, Beno Shani v'tzurva me Rabbanan Shani. In this case, we're talking about a case where he was actually the son of the Ariv, and he was a young Torah scholar. With the combination of those facts, it is not considered bad to take that advice. That's why Abaye was willing to give that advice in this situation. But the Gemara continues, practically speaking, v'ha'arevu. In this case, he was an Ariv. He was a guarantor for the ksuba. But v'kai malon. But we've actually established Ariv de ksuba lo mishtabe, that when a person's an Ariv for a ksuba, there actually is no binding agreement in such a case, as the Gemara will explain as it goes on. And so therefore, what difference does it make? Even if he was an Ariv, it's not going to be binding when it comes to situations of Ariv by ksuba. And the Gemara continues and answers, Kablan Hava. Well, in this case, he wasn't exactly an Ariv, he was a Kablan. That's a stronger level of a guarantor, and therefore that obligation is binding even when it comes to the ksuba. But the Gemara continues, Hanich leman do amar Kablan de ksuba afagav de lesle nichse lebal mishtabit shapir. That works according to the one who says that a Kablan by a ksuba, even if the husband had no property at the time of the marriage, still we say that the Kablan, the obligation is binding, so that makes sense. In this case, it was binding. But according to the one who says he islay mishtabed, there's a man d'amar that says that if the husband has property, so then it's binding when he becomes a Kablan. Again, this is if he has property at the time of the marriage. But he leslay lo mishtabed, but if he had no property at the time of the marriage, even a Kablan is not binding. So Michael Amemer, so what are we going to say? Even if he was a Kablan in this case, it should not have been binding. And the Gemara continues and answers, Ibai saying, if you want, I could say, Mahava Havale, that in this case, Rav Huna actually did have property at the time he got married. V'yishtadif, and then the property, it was swept up, there was a flood, it was ruined property, and so therefore, in this case, again, the Kablonos would be binding. V'Ibai saying, and if you want, I could say another answer, Abba Lagabe Berei. Here we're talking not about any Kablan, we're talking about a father being a Kablan on behalf of his son. There certainly, Shibude Mishabe Nafshe, there certainly he is Mishabed himself, and it is in fact a binding agreement to be a Kablan. And the Gemara continues, the Itmar, because it was stated there is a machlokas amoraim when it comes to ksuba, oriv de ksuba divrei hakol lo mishtabed. And oriv by ksuba, everybody agrees it is not binding, there's no obligation. Kavlan de bal chov divrei hakol mishtabed, a kavlan by a creditor, that everybody agrees it is a binding agreement that he's obligated to pay. Kavlan de ksuba v'oriv de bal chov, but when it comes to a kavlan by ksuba and an oriv by a regular creditor, pligi, there actually is a machlokas amoraim. Mar savar yislei nichse lelova mishtabed. One says that if the lova has property at the time of the loan, so then it's binding, ilesle lo mishtabed, but otherwise there is no shibud. Umar savar, the other one holds, bein islay uvein lesle, whether he has or whether he doesn't have mishtabed, there is a shibud in the situation. V'hilchas, and the halacha is arev, when it comes to an arev, bein islay uvein leslay mishtabit, it doesn't matter if he has or if he doesn't have, there is a shibud. Bar me arev de ksuba, with the exception of an arev by ksuba, tiafagav de islay leba lo mishtabit, even if the husband has property at the time of the marriage, there is no shibud, there is no obligation. And the Gemara continues and explains my time, and what's the reason for this? Why is ksuba different, that the arvus does not take effect? The Gemara explains, mitzvah hu da'avad v'lav midi chasra. The reason why a person becomes an ari by a ksuba is because he's trying to encourage the woman to accept the marriage. He's doing a mitzvah over here. His intention really is not to pay off the ksuba, it's just to encourage them to get married. And also again, v'lav midi chasra, she's not really losing anything. She's not a creditor. She hasn't lent any money that she's not getting paid back. That's not what's technically happening by ksuba, and that's why an arev by ksuba is not mishtabed. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Huna says, if a person on his deathbed, he's makdish all of his property, he donates it to the Beis HaMikdash, v'yomer, and then he says, money leploni biyadi, that I owe a money to so-and-so, now when he is believed that he actually owes that money, chazaka, because there's a presumption, ein adam osa kanunya al hektish, a person is not going to collude against hektish to make hektish lose unnecessarily, therefore we assume he's telling the truth, and he actually does owe the money. But the Gemara continues, Maskif lo Rav Nachman, Rav Nachman asks on this, v'chi adam osa kanunya al banav, is a person going to collude against his children? The Rav Shmuel damri tarvayu, because Rav and Shmuel, they both say, Shchimei Rasha Amar money leploni biyadi, if a person's on his deathbed and he says, I owe a money to so-and-so, Amar tenu nosen, if he says, give the money, then we give it. Then we assume he actually owes the money. But lo Amar tenu, but if he doesn't say give it, ein nosen, we do not give it because we assume he doesn't actually owe the money. We assume what he's saying is not true. Alma adam asoy shelo lasbias banav, we see that a person sometimes will say this in order not to make his sons look like they have a lot. He doesn't want people to think his children are wealthy, and that's why he says he has these debts, but we don't really believe that he has these debts, and we should apply the same thing when it comes to hektish, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Kuf Ayin Hey Amud Aleph.